I can see a big future in historic racing.
So I set up an office for him, and I said, right, Fred, I said, well, how about we kick off Gibson Motorsport again? He said, well, how the hell do we do that?
And then we were looking for drivers, and what I did in the days back in Sydney, I knew Barry Seaton very well. He drove with me to Bathurst in 67 and 68, and he's a good friend of mine. His son Glenn was looking for something to do. I was looking for an engine man. So I asked Barry Seaton to come down to Melbourne and take over the engine shop and do the engine development, which he did. And by doing that, Glenn Seaton arrived in Melbourne as well and become a junior driver for us.
In 1986, Garry Scott debuted the Group A Skyline 6-cylinder turbo with another spectacular pole position. In 1987, victory came agonisingly close with the unforgettable Glenn Seaton in second place.
Oh, Glenn.
And then I realised in HR 31 days we needed to get an experienced driver in the team that really taught the young guys. And I said, you write out a list of 6 people, I'll write a list of 6 people on a bit of paper and tell me, then we'll look at the list. Top of that list was Jim Richards on both lists.
As always, the foundation of the Nissan success story was teamwork. Gibson's close-knit squad is unique in touring car racing. There is a genuine camaraderie and mutual respect that stamps the Gibson Motorsport Nissan GTR team as one of the best to ever conquer the Bathurst Mountain Classic.
We'd heard that Berringer had retired, Paul Berringer had retired from Toyota. We said, let's give him a call, because he was very much part of the era.
It's often difficult in a corporate world to understand that the team sometimes actually is going to fail, and it picks itself up, keeps running, and off it goes. So balancing the corporate and sponsorship with the objectives of the day-to-day race team operation is something that needs a bit of understanding and a bit of explaining within a large company.
Well, really, I run the whole show, I suppose. Really, I really make decisions on sort of like what tyres they use, what laps they do, and who drives the car. All you do is grind it, you measure turn, leave it there. You 3 down there, everyone else back here. If something goes wrong, it's my fault.
This has been our team. This to me is a win for Scapey and I and Fred. There's no number one driver in our team, as you know, and Mark absolutely drove brilliantly. The car was perfect, so it's an equal win for both Mark and I and Fred, because without them I couldn't have done it.
And I said, right, Fred, I said, well, how about we kick off Gibson Motorsport again? He said, well, how the hell do we do that? And I said, well, for a start, I said, there's an office here, that's yours, it's got a phone to fax machine in it, and let's let everybody know what we're doing, and see if we can get some of the old Group A cars back and have a bit of a play around and with that. So after a few weeks, we're thinking, well, okay, fine, and we'd heard that Berringer had retired, Paul Berringer had retired from Toyota. We said, let's give him a call, because he was very much part of the era, and Paul come in, and we've sort of progressed from there and got customers involved, because the technical expertise that we still have from my experience and my offside of Peter West, so between the two of us, as far as chassis engine engineering and that goes, we have a very good memory still of these cars.
Well, certainly Alan and Fred decided that they want to rebuild the Gibson Motorsport image. They knew there were enough of the old Nissan cars around, and they contacted me and asked me if I could provide them some advice. And really, 1 hour conversation grew into a 1 day conversation, which grew into a 2 week conversation, which has grown into a 2 year relationship, which I hope will now continue.
you know, I look back on that experience, and here we are today now again, putting together all those old cars in one group of cars as Gibson Motorsport. That's how it went from Nissan Motorsport to Gibson Motorsport. And the thing is, right now today, we've reinvented Gibson Motorsport the last 2 years now, and a guy called Paul Berenger, who was motorsport boss at Nissan years ago, he's been assisting me do this through Alan Heafy and myself and Paul to develop, I suppose, a friendship of all the owners of the cars. We built sort of like, you know, all the GTRs, all the DR30s and the Bluebirds and that. There's quite a collection of cars. The only car that's missing out of that collection is the car that Mark Scaife rolled over at Adelaide in the Grand Prix, and we wrote that off. All the other cars, there's 15 cars available, and today I think we've got 12 cars here at Sandown.
And of course we started talking to a few owners, and it went from there, and people now bring their cars to us for maintenance, like engine work and all that type thing. I mean, there's a number of them look after their cars, but you know, we're sort of building up and doing more and more of the maintenance for them, to the point where we're actually carrying some of the cars around now and taking the race moon, and so the owner rocks up with a driving suit, helmet, and has a play around for the weekend and then goes home again, and we take it back and do the maintenance and all that type of thing on it. Yeah.
Well, I think really what we've done, we've opened some doors again, because right now what do you do with the cars? They are collected of, they're still race cars, and when Paul Berenger and I spoke about this, and Alan Heafy, we said, okay, we're not making any money out of this. This is all something we're doing for the sport, and we've worked hard to make the sport realise what we can do and what we can show and what's good for the category. Like Group A, Group C's got a terrific, I suppose, following of fans. Like you see fathers come here with their kids now that used to be our fans years ago, and that's terrific, and that's the sort of thing we're trying to promote. We've done this for 2 years now. It's cost us money to do it. We don't get paid to do it. Paul and I don't get paid to do it. They're all customer cars that own the cars. We service the cars and look after the cars. They're happy for us to do that, and the money we make, the bit of money we make doing that, we put back into showing the cars.
Out of the great gaggle of drivers that you've had something to deal with, who do you remember the most?
Well, a good friend of mine's Alan Moffat, and like a lot of people didn't like Alan Moffat. He's a personal friend of mine. I see him regularly, sort of thing. People don't know the real Alan Moffat. Alan Moffat's a lovely guy. He's a good guy, but he's a race driver. And when you look at Alan Moffat, he had to really work at his job to do his job. Like you look at Peter Brock, he was a natural. Different sort of person altogether. So you got the Alan Moffats, the Peter Brocks, and then I relate that to sort of Peter Brock's a Craig Lowndes, and Alan Moffat's a Mark Scaife. That's the sort of thing. Mark Scaife works hard at his job. Alan Moffat works, but as far as, you know, they're a legend. Like Alan's a legend. I was very lucky to drive with Alan in the Ford Works team. I was the only guy in the Ford Works team that could drive his car, because he was very precious with letting people not drive his car. And I could go and test his car and sort of on the Friday and make sure what I thought of when I did my car as a works car, and he was quite comfortable with that. I drove overseas in Singapore. I drove to the Philippines with him for Ford Motor. So Alan's a really good friend of mine, and he's a legend of the sport. You know, there's other drivers in the sport that I wouldn't put on that mantle. You know, but he's the sort of guy. But even Jim Richards, he's an icon as well. You know, having Jim as one of our drivers was fantastic, really, in some ways. But those sort of older drivers that I drove with, you know, the Johnny Frenches of the world, like, you know, all those sort of people, they are just super people. But people don't really know them. The public don't know them as I would know them. And I think that's very important to know that sort of thing.
The pack of arseholes thing at Bathurst that year, was that a low point for you?
Not really, not in a way. That's the way sometimes crowds react, sort of thing. And I think basically it wasn't towards the team or the drivers, it was towards the manufacturer, because it was a Japanese manufacturer that won the Australian race, and I think that was one of the problems there. But no.
Well, it's a slightly hostile reception. Mark, but you always knew that you were going to get that to some degree. But regardless, forgetting all of that, it was a triumph out there today, because they were the most adverse conditions that you could possibly have experienced.
Well, it was, but like we led the race all day. I can't believe this, you know, like the Nissan Winfield, we won the race. That's how it is.
Jim,
I'm just really stunned for words. I can't believe the reception. I thought Australian race fans had a lot more to go than this. This is bloody disgraceful. I'll keep racing, but I tell you what, this is going to remain with me for a long time. You're a pack of arseholes.
Disappointed in the disciplinary action that Cams took against Jim after I found out. I flew overseas after that race with Marscape to do a 3,000 race, and when I overseas I rang back to see Jim, and I spoke to Faye, his wife, on the phone. I said, "Oh, is Jim round?" She said, "No, he's gone to see Cams." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Oh, he's been called in to talk about what he said on the podium." And I said, well, I don't accept that, and I'm not happy with that. And when I come back, I went to Cams and spoke to them about that, because that's the game. Like, you see football now, don't you? And the crowd reacts to the different ways. And I just think it's good that the crowd reacted in some ways. It wasn't bad. Like, we did it, we won it. I'm not a team manager that goes home and leaves everyone laying around and sort of, I'm off, I'll see you later, next race meeting. I'm always here when they would do it. And that's always been a fact. I've never been a team manager that hops in the car and goes after a meeting. Highlights. Probably a highlight for me was sort of being able to be as successful as I was. Probably winning Bathurst with Harry in '67 was terrific. And then and probably as a driver, having driven the sorts of cars I drove, open wheel cars, sports cars, touring cars, I drove all sorts of cars all over the world, really, in lots of ways. So I was very lucky in those achievements. Probably never won many things as far as accolades of championships, but I really enjoyed that. But I really enjoyed being a team owner, team manager, and I think that was really a challenge for me. I was going to have the best team with the best drivers, the best people, and the best budget, and I did all those things. And to finish up as we did, the best team, I think they're my highlights as far as the teams we owned and the things we did and the achievements we had, and winning Bathurst for the first time with a Japanese car with the GTR, fighting the war with the GTR with handicapping and all those sorts of things, and beating them anyway. It didn't matter what they did to Handy, we found a way around it, and we still found a way to beat them.
Fred, thanks for a wonderful weekend. We've learned so much that I never considered all those years ago. It's just so great to see it all in one package and the end result the other way around. Thanks for your time. And
well, I'd like to thank you guys, and especially Super100MPH sort of thing, because really doing this sort of thing and knowing where it's going and what audience is going to see it, some of history of motorsport that I've been involved in, I think it's fantastic. And I'd like to thank you guys for coming along and doing all this today.
Thank you.